she sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the youngest finally tucked into bed, absent-mindedly sorting through tea bags in the box. She just wanted something warm, anything would do. It had been a hard day, like the last 15 years. Work, school, soccer practice, the youngest coughing, the middle one forgetting her homework, the never-ending rip-tights and constant mom, "Where's my—" She managed. She didn't complain. But sometimes she just wanted to sit, close her eyes, and be no one for a while. Her phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with the name Eric, her ex. 15 years as an ex, but still the father of her 4 kids, which was a bond stronger than any marriage license. She answered, calm and emotionless. "Hello? Hey." His voice was upbeat, like in those rare moments when he'd show up with bags of groceries and promises that he was finally getting his life together. "Hey, how are you?" "Fine, how are the kids?" "Your kids." "The same as always. Growing, learning." He chuckled, a sound that made it clear he had no idea what to do with that answer. There was silence on the line before he finally spoke again. "Listen, I'm getting married. For real this time. Everything's different now. And you should, probably get married too. Stop waiting for me." She didn't respond right away, not because she didn't know what to say, but because it took her a moment to process what he'd said. Slowly, she set down her mug of half-drunk tea and let out a laugh. Quiet, almost soundless. "You think I've been waiting for you?" she asked, her voice calm without a trace of bitterness. "Well, you're still alone, not married. I thought maybe—" She took a breath, suddenly cold despite the warm May air outside. "I'm not alone," she said evenly. "I have my kids. I have my job. My days are packed down to the minute. And you call me every couple of months, thinking I spend that time staring out the window, waiting for the day Eric finally gets really married?" He didn't respond. "You left, then you got married, then divorced, then lived with someone else, then someone else again. Meanwhile, I was raising them, when they were sick, when they were bullied, when we were broke. And I wasn't waiting. I was living, and I still am. I just wanted to tell you, like an adult," he muttered. "Well, I appreciate that," she said, her voice steady. "And as an adult, I'll say this, thank you. Good luck. I mean that. But don't call me with these revelations anymore. I don't need them." She hung up, staring at the phone for a moment before turning the screen off. Her oldest daughter shuffled into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed. "Mom, who was that?" "No one. Go drink some water and get back to bed. We've got an early morning tomorrow." The girl padded back to her room, leaving her alone again at the table. The quiet returned. Only this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't painful. It felt like release. 15 years ago, when he left, part of her had still waited, then hoped, then resented. But now, finally, she let it go. Outside, a car engine roared to life. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. She reheated her tea, the ordinary rhythms of an ordinary evening settling around her. It was her life now, only hers.
Mornings always start the same. Cinnamon coffee in a travel mug, a half-awake drive on autopilot, out of the driveway, onto the loop, into the downtown parking garage. Lights on in the office, a few clicks, and the screen fills with spreadsheets, emails to DOS. I'm 38, old enough to not chase approval, young enough to still feel every heartbeat. Middle management, not an executive, but not some guy fetching coffee either. My team respects me, my boss leaves me be. I look the part, pressed shirt, clean haircut, polished shoes, a quiet wristwatch. I know how to listen without interrupting, how to crack the right joke at the right time. I don't preach, I don't overshare. I'm married. Not perfectly, but married. 15 years now. My wife, she's like that old playlist you keep in your car. You know every note, every lyric, even the ones that annoy you. There are things that still make me respect her. There are things that drive me crazy. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's distant. Sometimes we don't speak for a day, then argue, then suddenly laugh at something dumb in the kitchen. That's marriage. Real marriage. No Instagram gloss, just two people with a shared world, kids, a home, a past. You don't just drag and drop that into the trash. And in this world, there's me, a guy who hears people whisper behind his back, You? Still faithful? Why? You're a good-looking guy, successful. What's the deal? They say I could have a line out the door. Women smile, flirt, sometimes linger in conversation a little too long, but no one ever crosses the line, and I don't invite them to. One of the women in my department is Rachel. She's 30, sharp, heels every day, always has a comment that makes the room laugh. The office lights up around her. Sometimes she jokes with a twist. Sometimes she bends just a little lower for a folder. If I were 25, I probably would have fallen. Now, I just smile back. The other day she said, "You're always so decent. Guys like you don't exist." I shrugged. They do. You're just not looking in the right places. My coworker Kevin has that permanent smirk. Come on, man. Every guy's got issues at home. You fix that stuff on the side. That's how it works. He doesn't know I've got issues too. Evenings where my wife and I sit across from each other and the kitchen table feels like the Atlantic Ocean, where everything about me seems to irritate her. The way I chew, the way I scroll, the way I breathe. And her? She drives me up the wall with the way she clicks the remote, the way she says figures under her breath, the way her eyes roll like it's a tick. But I don't leave. I don't go looking for a second act for my soul. You know why? Because cheating isn't about sex. It's about betrayal. It's knowing you're walking out the door planning to lie. It's the moment your gaze changes, when your thoughts are no longer where they should be. One night becomes a snowball, and suddenly you're standing in the hallway, eyes to the floor, saying, "I didn't mean to. I don't know how it happened. But I know. You always know." It's easy to blame the other person when a marriage starts unraveling. She's cold. She's tired. She doesn't notice me. She doesn't inspire me. But let's be honest, I'm no saint either. I'm not always kind, not always patient, not always the first to say sorry. I've got my flaws. I just believe that if you said I'm in, then stay in, or leave like a man. But sneaking around? That's not about passion. That's about weakness. Tonight we're at the kitchen table. Her eyes look heavy. I sip tea. The TV mumbles in the background, no one really watching. "You stayed late again?" she asks. "Work?" She nods. Then quietly, "Are we okay?" I pause, weigh my words. I don't want to lie. It's not always easy. But I'm here. On purpose. She doesn't say thank you, just looks at me, then stands, goes to the cabinet, and brings out those chocolate chip cookies I like. The ones she only buys when she remembers. We eat in silence. But it's something. It's still something. Sometimes people say, "You just haven't met the right temptation yet." Maybe. Or maybe I've just learned to say no to myself before I start saying yes to trouble. And if you're reading this, looking for a way to justify your own affair, don't blame it on her, or him, or life. That's all you. When you want out, you look for excuses. When you want to stay, you look for ways. I'm just here, living. No drama, no side stories. And somehow that quiet loyalty feels like strength, maybe even love.
The kitchen smelled of Earl Grey tea and something else. Age, maybe. My parents' house always smelled the same. A little dusty, a little like lavender, a little like the crackle of dried flowers in a vase long forgotten. I'm 33 with my own marriage, my own habits, and my own sense of humor. One my husband doesn't always get, though we manage to laugh together anyway. That evening, we were joking around, teasing about how little I resembled my dad. It happens. "Hey, what if you're not his?" My husband joked, tossing a grape at me. "Sure, let's do a DNA test," I shot back, laughing. So I did, as a joke. No expectations, no anxiety, just a haha moment. I sent in the saliva sample, paid the fee, and forgot about it. A couple of weeks later, an email popped into my inbox. I opened it casually, coffee in hand, expecting nothing more than a coupon for sneakers. Instead, I got a gut punch. Negative. I wasn't my dad's daughter. I sat there, stunned, then reread it, and again. The laughter from that earlier conversation was now miles away. My husband leaned over my shoulder, reading the email. "Wait, what?" he managed slowly. I didn't respond, And then, like in some bad drama, there was a car ride. Long, silent, with my empty gaze fixed out the window and my heart pounding stupidly in my chest. I'm 33, but in that moment, I felt like a child again. The kind who still believed family was an unshakable truth. Mom had always been the moral compass in our lives. No lies, no drinking, no cheating, no yelling. Be better than this world, she'd say. Her closet was full of scarves for Sunday service. Her wallet held a picture of St. Nicholas. Every Easter meant church and candles. Every conversation carried a trace of righteousness. I walked into her house without knocking. She was in the kitchen ironing a tablecloth, just like always. Mom, I need to ask you something. She looked up and smiled. What is it, honey? Who's my father? Silence. The kind that feels like a wrecking ball swinging into a house. Her face twisted like fabric wrung out to dry. Then she slumped into a chair, deflated. You know? I nodded. She exhaled sharply. No denial, no shouting, just eyes clouding over like an old photograph. He didn't know, she said softly. You weren't supposed to either. And then it all came pouring out like dirty water from a busted pipe. Words I'd never unhear. My father wasn't my father. My brother wasn't from the same man as me. There had been another, a third, who fathered a baby that didn't survive infancy. Mom had lived how she could, or how she wanted, or maybe how the circumstances allowed. It didn't matter anymore. Every man was temporary, every one a story. But my dad, the man who raised me, loved me, took me fishing, fixed my bike, and cried at my wedding. He either didn't know or chose to stay anyway. I thought it would never come out, she whispered. I was scared. I spent my life trying to make up for it. Going to church, fasting, praying, like it could cleanse it all. I looked at her and didn't know who she was. The woman I'd called Mom now felt like a stranger. What about Dad? Did he know? She shook her head. No, he didn't. I swore I'd take this secret to my grave. The house tilted. Something inside me crumbled. The foundation on which my entire life had rested was gone. Who am I now? Whose am I? What's in my blood? I stepped outside. The wind was sharp, cold. One thought hammered in my head. How do I live with this? In the car, my husband was silent. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't the person he thought I was, that everything was different now. But he just took my hand, firmly, steadily, without words. Days passed, then weeks. I haven't forgiven her yet. I'm not even sure if I want to. I don't know what to do with the woman I called Mom, who built her life on a lie. I don't know if I should tell Dad. Probably not. Sometimes the truth is poison, but I do know one thing. I'm not the product of her sins. I'm me. I grew up, I loved, I learned, I failed, I fought, and I stood back up. I'm a person, messy, vulnerable, strong. And whatever flows in my veins doesn't change how I've lived my life. You can live with a broken foundation. You just have to learn to walk carefully, or build a new one that's entirely your own.
The house smells of cornbread, fried potatoes, and silence. Not the kind that crushes your ears, but the kind where two men, father and grown son, live easily side by side. We talk little, the way men often do, but we understand each other without fuss. No doors slam here anymore. No dishes fly against the walls. No woman's laugh drifts down the hallway. No little feet pound up the stairs. Only an old FM radio in the kitchen murmurs classic country tunes and the morning news from KQRS. That's how an ordinary weekday begins. While the coffee maker sputters, I, an aging man to whom life has handed both love and pain, let myself remember, sometimes you have to just to stay sane. I divorced back in 2014. A deployment to Afghanistan, routine for career guard soldiers like me. Camo, checkpoints, guys who ask no unnecessary questions. I flew home early, Saturday instead of Monday, because paperwork cleared faster than expected. Dawn, quiet stairwell. The familiar scent of the Minneapolis apartment building. My key turned, I stepped inside. Wrong size sneakers at the door, a stranger's jeans over the armchair, and then oil on canvas. My wife tangled in someone else's arms. Bed sheets in knots, her wide-eyed fear, his cocky half grin. I couldn't forgive. It wasn't pride. Something inside simply snapped like a blade driven in and left to rust. I sold my pickup, hired an attorney. The custody fight was brutal, but I won. My son, 10, stood beside me without a word. My daughter, 6, clung to my hand as if it were a life raft. We managed, no whining, no self-pity. I worked swing shifts at the rail yard. They went to school. The house in St. Paul wasn't fancy, but it was ours. 5 bedrooms, warm in winter, floors I'd laid myself, yard toys bought bit by bit. We held on. Then came 2019, a buddy's birthday cookout out in Stillwater. Brisket, light beer, old friends. She was there. Leah, large brown eyes, shy smile. Flinched at sharp laughs, winced when someone slammed a cooler lid. Later a friend whispered, her husband's a bully. Tracks everything she does, explodes when he drinks, smacks her and the kids. 2 girls, 4 and 11. We texted after that. Nothing heavy, stickers, check-ins, goodnight notes. Half a year passed. Then, could we talk? We sat in my truck outside her duplex. She spoke fast, half whispering, scared the neighbors might hear. I, a man who'd stopped believing in second chances, felt something thaw beneath old winter ice. I asked my kids, now 17 and 12. They traded glances. Dad, if she's kind and her girls are safe with us, bring them. I drove over, alone. Expected a brute. Met a scrawny 5'5" drunk with a cigarette and a sneer. Words failed, fists followed. I'm not proud, yet I'd do the same. We packed Leah's things, buckled her daughters in, headed home. A new life started. Her girls accepted me instantly. Mine were cautious at first, then the 4 blended like cousins at a long reunion. Mornings were a blur. Elementary school, middle school, my son's community college, my graveyard shift. Leah cleaned, cooked, laughed again. Evenings, the big oak table buzzed with voices. It felt unreal, peaceful. We married. 30 days between her divorce decree and our courthouse vows. Nearly a year of calm. Then, it unraveled. Her youngest let it slip. Mom sees the other guy when you're at work. I doubted, then checked. Truth hurts fast. I sent all 4 kids to Valley Fair for the day. Rides, funnel cakes, prepaid wristbands. Then sat across from Leah at the dining table. Quiet, no shouting. Why? She sighed. Everything's fine here, maybe too fine. You don't yell, you don't hit, you barely drink, there's no music blaring. The house feels like a clinic. With him, it's crazy, alive. He swears he's changed, won't lay a hand on me again. And well, the sex is wild. The floor seemed to tilt. Anger never flared, only emptiness. I grabbed a duffel, drove 3 nights on overtime, slept in the crew cab. Came back, she was gone. House key hooked neatly on the dog's leash. Goodbye. 3 days later, she returned for a box from the closet. Stood in the doorway, hair covering her face. I saw the bruise. Purple, swollen, ugly. Felt nothing. No pity, no rage, just hollow. A year I patched myself up. Work helped. Steel tools occupy restless hands. One evening that same buddy said, "Quit rescuing folks who live in mud. Some need it like air, prov bile. Now it's just me and my son. He's 21, works IT, lifts weights. My daughter married last fall, moved to Denver. Her husband's a vascular surgeon. They're fine. Nights my boy and I sit quietly, sometimes chess, sometimes ribs on the smoker. He laughs when I crash at 9, I grumble when he stumbles in at midnight, and the house is silent. True silence, the kind that says, it's over, keep walking. You made it, you're alive."
California's sun burned into my shoulders, and the air carried the tang of salt water, the sweet scent of sunscreen, and the distant laughter of beachgoers. A gentle tune played near the infinity pool, something light and tropical, with a pop beat underneath. This was not the kind of resort you stumble upon by accident. 5-star luxury, a seafood buffet, waiters dressed in crisp white uniforms, and pristine cleanliness. A place where you escape not only the daily grind, but yourself. I'd been lounging by the pool for days, sipping cold craft beer and worrying about nothing except not getting sunburned before I had to fly home. It was somewhere between my 3rd and 4th pint when I noticed them by the edge of the water. She was blonde, maybe 35, possibly older. tall, with a well-maintained figure, clearly someone who took care of herself. Her face had soft features, very all-American, slightly weary but glowing with happiness. He was lean and tanned, with a short beard and dark sunglasses. His eyes, though obscured, seemed intense. When he looked at her, there was so much tenderness that, even as a lifelong cynic, I felt a pang somewhere inside. They laughed, splashed in the water, and talked in a mix of accented English and something else I couldn't place. She kissed his cheek. He held her by the waist. At some point, I found myself close enough to strike up a conversation, because that's what happens on vacations. "Are you two together?" I asked, without malice or ulterior motives, just out of curiosity. She laughed. "Yes," she said. "We meet here every year, 6 years in a row now." He nodded, adding with an accent, "She is my love, only one, my beloved." I raised an eyebrow and smiled. California's sun, summer, romance, it all fit into a story as cliched as it was warm. "Where do you live?" I asked. "I'm from Michigan," she said. "He lives here in San Diego. He works at the marina, sometimes does boat tours. And me, I don't work? You don't work? And who pays for all this?" I gestured around at the lavish resort. "It's not cheap, you know?" She looked at me calmly, almost defiantly. "My husband, your husband?" I nearly choked on my beer. "So you're married?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I have a son. He's 11. My husband is a good man, hardworking, supportive. We've been together a long time. But," she glanced at the man next to her, "I love him. My Turk." He smiled at her but didn't follow every word. She leaned in and kissed him briefly. I was stunned. A husband, a son, and annual trips to another man across the country? Not for a day or two, but for a whole week, every year for 6 years straight? "Does he know?" I asked finally. "My husband?" She smirked. "No, of course not. He thinks I'm on a girl's trip. Says I deserve it." The Turk watched her with such adoration that it felt as if the world around him disappeared whenever she was near. He couldn't catch all of our conversation, but he understood enough from her tone. He took her hand and pressed it against his chest. She kissed him on the lips. I stepped away, not out of morality, but because the air felt tight, claustrophobic. Not from judgment, but from the sheer weight of it all. Somewhere in Michigan, there's a man who has no idea his wife flies off to San Diego each year to be with someone else. He might be at home making breakfast for their son, completely oblivious that his wife is wrapped in another man's arms by a pool on the Pacific coast. And there I was, sitting by the pool, listening to someone say "I love you" with a thick accent, and realizing the world isn't black and white. It's painted in shades of loyalty, lust, lies, self-deception, and the aching desire to feel alive. Because in her eyes, there was no cruelty, no malice, only longing for something she didn't have at home. I went back to my chair, poured myself another beer, and stretched out under the sun. But one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If your wife, Susan, takes annual girls' trips to San Diego, buddy, you're a fool.
It happened on one of those Saturdays where you plan to be out for just a couple of hours, but somehow you end up getting home late, exhausted, hungry, and with no clear idea of where the day even went. I was trying to find a warehouse. A buddy had asked me to swing by and check out some leftover materials that might be useful for a cabin project. He texted the location and said, "It's simple, you won't get lost." Sure thing. I left after lunch, punched the address into Google Maps, and everything seemed fine until I got into the industrial zone. You know the type. Big gray buildings, cracked asphalt lots, weird side roads, and zero signs on anything. And then the GPS just lost its mind. Started looping me around, sending me down dead ends, pointing me toward random abandoned loading docks. I tried restarting the route, turning around. Nothing helped. I called my friend. No answer. Finally, I gave up and decided to head back toward the highway and just go home. By the time I got out of that maze, the sun was setting. I got home completely drained, like I'd spent the day hauling bricks instead of driving. The house was quiet. My wife was in the kitchen. The kids were at their grandma's. I tossed my jacket over a chair and collapsed onto the couch. I had just started to stretch out when my phone buzzed from the windowsill. My wife was passing by, so I asked without thinking, "Hey, Sarah, can you check who that is?" I'm too tired to get up. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and then pause. I didn't notice it at first, just silence. Then she looked up and very calmly, almost flatly, read aloud, "Tell us about your experience at Ocean Breeze Spa." That's when I realized the day wasn't quite over yet. "What's that?" she asked, same calm tone. But I knew that tone. That tone's more dangerous than yelling. What spa?" I said, sitting up as if I could hear better from a different position. She silently turned the screen toward me. It was a notification from Google, a request to leave a review. Ocean Breeze Spa. Of course. Looked like I'd spent the afternoon relaxing at a day spa instead of chasing scrap wood across a junkyard. I started explaining. It had to be a mistake. I told her I'd been lost in the industrial district, that the GPS probably logged my location, and maybe this spa was just next to the warehouse I'd been circling. I hadn't even seen a spa. Just fences, concrete, pipes. Who puts a spa there? But the more I explained, the dumber it all sounded. I mean, seriously, I was in the middle of nowhere looking for a warehouse, and somehow a spa was next door, and my phone thought I went in? I didn't even believe it myself. She just stared at me, and that silence was worse than any argument. "So you went to a spa?" she finally asked. "No, I didn't even see the place. You know me." "Well," she said, turning back toward the kitchen, "now I'm not so sure." And off she went, with my phone. I just sat there in the hallway, half out of my jacket, still wearing my shoes, feeling this weird guilt, like I had snuck off to steam and sip beer while she was home making dinner. We barely talked that evening. Dinner was quiet and cold, and I slept on the couch. The next day, I went full detective mode, dug up the address, cross-checked it on maps, zoomed in on the satellite view. Sure enough, the spa was literally next door to that warehouse, like wall to wall. Took screenshots, printed them out like some kind of courtroom exhibit, and showed her. She looked, sighed, and just said, "Still weird how these kinds of coincidences only ever happen to you." So yeah, good luck trusting GPS after that.
She sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the youngest finally tucked into bed, absent-mindedly sorting through tea bags in the box. She just wanted something warm, anything would do. It had been a hard day, like the last 15 years. Work, school, soccer practice, the youngest coughing, the middle one forgetting her homework, the never-ending rip-tights and constant "Mom, where's my—" She managed. She didn't complain. But sometimes she just wanted to sit, close her eyes, and be no one for a while. Her phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with the name Eric, her ex. 15 years as an ex, but still the father of her 4 kids, which was a bond stronger than any marriage license. She answered, calm and emotionless. "Hello? Hey." His voice was upbeat, like in those rare moments when he'd show up with bags of groceries and promises that he was finally getting his life together. "Hey, how are you?" "Fine. How are the kids?" "Your kids. The same as always. Growing, learning." He chuckled, a sound that made it clear he had no idea what to do with that answer. There was silence on the line before he finally spoke again. "Listen, I'm getting married. For real this time. Everything's different now. And you should, probably get married too. Stop waiting for me." She didn't respond right away, not because she didn't know what to say, but because it took her a moment to process what he'd said. Slowly, she set down her mug of half-drunk tea and let out a laugh. Quiet, almost soundless. "You think I've been waiting for you?" she asked, her voice calm without a trace of bitterness. "Well, you're still alone, not married. I thought maybe—" She took a breath, suddenly cold despite the warm May air outside. "I'm not alone," she said evenly. "I have my kids. I have my job. My days are packed down to the minute. And you call me every couple of months. Thinking I spend that time staring out the window, waiting for the day Eric finally gets really married?" He didn't respond. "You left, then you got married, then divorced, then lived with someone else, then someone else again. Meanwhile, I was raising them, when they were sick, when they were bullied, when we were broke. And I wasn't waiting. I was living, and I still am." I just wanted to tell you, like an adult, he muttered. Well, I appreciate that, she said, her voice steady. And as an adult, I'll say this, thank you. Good luck. I mean that. But don't call me with these revelations anymore. I don't need them. She hung up, staring at the phone for a moment before turning the screen off. Her oldest daughter shuffled into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed. Mom, who was that? No one. Go drink some water and get back to bed. We've got an early morning tomorrow. The girl padded back to her room, leaving her alone again at the table. The quiet returned. Only this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't painful. It felt like release. 15 years ago, when he left, part of her had still waited, then hoped, then resented. But now, finally, she let it go. Outside, a car engine roared to life. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. She reheated her tea, the ordinary rhythms of an ordinary evening settling around her. It was her life now, only hers.
In the fall of 2017, I moved to Chicago. At the time, it felt like everything was just beginning. A new life, new possibilities. As they say, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I had a few $100s in my pocket, a good supply of determination, and a heavy sense of weariness from small-town life behind me. The city greeted me with wind and gray skies, but I didn't care. Aesthetics weren't a priority. 3 days after arriving, I landed a job as a low-voltage electrician. Not glamorous work, but solid enough for a fresh start. I stayed in a shared dorm room in an old industrial building, bare bones but livable. There was a mattress on the floor, a boiling kettle, scribbles on the walls from former tenants, and a fine layer of dust on the windowsill, like it had been waiting for someone new to show up. After a couple of weeks on the job, I realized I needed a laptop to configure equipment on site. One with a working battery, since power wasn't always guaranteed on location. I found a listing on Craigslist, affordable, seemed in good shape. Reached out to the seller, and we agreed to meet near the Logan Square subway station. The guy waiting for me looked about 25. Friendly, backpack slung over one shoulder. He pulled out the laptop, powered it on. Everything seemed to check out. Said he was selling it for his sister, who didn't have time to deal with it herself. Pretty standard story. I handed over the cash, he thanked me, shook my hand, and disappeared into the crowd. That was the last I saw of him. Back at my room, I unpacked the laptop, set the kettle to boil, and powered it up. No password screen. The seller hadn't wiped anything. The browser was still open, tabs filled with social media profiles, messages, and photos. I paused. It felt like I was standing in front of a door to someone else's life. All I had to do was turn the knob, and there'd be no going back. Curiosity won. I told myself it was just a technical sweep, just checking for leftover files. But I knew that was a lie. And that's how I met Kelsey, the laptop's original owner. A young woman, apparently also new to Chicago, originally from Indiana. Lived with a roommate in a tiny apartment, worked odd jobs, took out payday loans, tried to get by. Her messages with her boyfriend were a mess. One day he loved her, the next he screamed at her, then he begged her back. A shaky emotional roller coaster. Arguments, suspicions, crying emojis. It all read like she was running from her own reality. She didn't seem to want a steady job, or maybe didn't know how to get one. Her roommate, Dana, also from Indiana, came off more focused and driven. Not without quirks, but sharper. Dana had a boyfriend named Mike. In their messages, he came across like the perfect guy. Caring, generous, reliable. The photos showed a slim guy with a kind face, always standing next to his well-loved Honda Civic. He drove the girls around, lent them money, gave thoughtful gifts. He believed in love, you could tell. Then came September. The chats between the girls got more personal. They started fantasizing about a better life. Upscale restaurants, expensive clothes, men in suits, talk about making it big. Eventually, a new character popped up, a man in his 40s from Miami. He invited them to a staff training retreat, promised to cover flights, hotel, food, even some leisure time. The word training was clearly a front. Nobody was under any illusions. They discussed it for 5 minutes, flights booked, bags packed. Stories made up for the guys. It's a work thing. We'll be busy. Don't worry. Dana hugged Mike goodbye. Kelsey sent her boyfriend a heart emoji and a short love you text. 2 weeks of Florida sun. Photos showed beaches, champagne glasses, hookah smoke, a man in a white shirt with the shadow of a wine glass across someone's leg. Their chats were full of giggling, inside jokes, and vivid recaps of their sexual adventures with the passionate Miami guy. There were lines like, "Mike is such a sweetheart. If only all guys were like that, and we make the perfect team, babe." I read through it all like someone watching a play with a tragic ending you can't stop. I felt disgust, sadness, and this oddly naive craving for justice. I knew it wasn't my business, but I couldn't look away. It just felt too raw, too open, too wrong. When the girls came back, they messaged each other about how great everything had gone. Kelsey texted Dana, "He's not my type, but did you see that watch?" Followed by a stream of laughing emojis. Dana replied, "It's all about the vibe. Mike will be fine. He's a good guy." That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside. I had to be up at 6 for a job site in Joliet, checking signal cables near a chemical plant. But I sat at the desk, staring at the screen. My hand moved on its own. I opened the messages, selected the key threads, screenshots, a few photos, dialogues without ambiguity, just raw, detailed truth. Stuff no one was meant to see. I logged into Kelsey's account, opened her chat with Mike, wrote one line, "Take a look," attached the files. 5 minutes later, she must have noticed the breach. The accounts were immediately shut down. Passwords changed, all sessions logged out. I closed the laptop, laid down on the mattress, pulled my jacket over me like a blanket. Morning was coming, and so was another workday. What happened after that, I don't know. I didn't want to know. I was just a bystander. A stranger handed someone else's suitcase full of secrets. But maybe, just maybe, that night someone learned a truth they were never meant to hear.
It happened more than a decade ago, during a time when the sunlight had a nostalgic warmth. I was sitting on the floor of my small New York apartment, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea in hand, and a storm of thoughts in my head. I had just gone through a rough day work, stress, rain, and that familiar loneliness. Then he showed up. Ryan, my longtime friend. No call, no text, just knocked on my door with 2 spoons and a tub of Ben & Jerry's. Like old times. His voice had that calming steadiness I always needed. Things happened naturally. We started spending more time together, coffee runs, long walks in Central Park, talking about books, dreams, the absurdity of adulthood. And eventually, we crossed the line. At first, it felt harmless. Then it felt too good. The chemistry between us was undeniable, physical and emotional. But some things didn't quite fit. He never stayed the night. He never met my friends. Holidays were always complicated. My gut whispered things my heart didn't want to hear. Sometimes, he'd vanish for days. My texts would go unanswered. Calls would drop with a, "Hang on, I've got another call." And that would be it. But he always had reasons, logical ones. I wanted to believe him, so I did. Once, I mentioned bumping into an ex. Ryan froze. Then he said, "I don't want to share you." I took it as romantic at the time. Looking back, it felt possessive, a warning I didn't see. We talked about the future, kids, a townhouse with a yellow door. He called me the future astronaut mum, and I laughed like it was possible. I believed him. Then came my dream trip, 3 weeks through Italy and Greece. I sent him photos. We messaged every day. "Wish you were here," he wrote. "Stay safe," I replied. When I got back, we met. Everything felt familiar and warm. Then, 2 weeks, later silence. No messages, no replies. Finally, I called. My voice cracked as I asked, "What's going on?" His was calm, distant. "I'm going to be a father." He admitted he had been seeing 2 other women. One of them, Claire, was pregnant. "I didn't plan any of this," he said, "but it's the right thing to do." I didn't cry. I said, "Okay, take care." and hung up. We met once after that, about 6 months later, at a neutral cafe. He looked tired, worn out, talked about diapers and sleepless nights. I smiled politely, like he was a distant memory. Since then, life moved on. I've loved, I've lost. But with Ryan, something deeper ended my ability to trust completely. I think about those days often, not with pain but with a kind of faded sweetness, like an old song you know by heart, out of tune but honest. He was my friend, my lover, my mistake. But he was also my spring, and even if it was, short-lived it bloomed.
I was 48 and thought I had built a quiet, good life for myself. 2 grown kids, both done with high school and living on their own. A small 2-bedroom townhouse in Portland with ivy crawling up the fence, lavender by the porch, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee. And there was Mark, my husband. We'd been married almost 30 years. Every morning I woke up before sunrise, brewed coffee in the old Mr. Coffee machine, packed Mark's lunch, turkey sandwiches with cheddar and an apple, and sent him off to work with a kiss on his cheek. Then I'd make oatmeal for myself, feed my cat, Milo, and sit by the window to read the news while the city slowly woke up. That January, he went on a ski trip to Mount Hood with some old college buddies. I folded his thermal shirts neatly, packed wool socks and the knit hat I'd made him back when we were first married. He kissed me quickly at the door. "See you Sunday, Lisa. Don't work too hard," he said, flashing that boyish grin. That weekend was rainy and gray. I lit candles, binge-watched old black and white movies, and baked blueberry muffins for when he returned. Saturday night he texted, "All good here. Beer and skiing. Miss you." I smiled, sending him a picture of Milo curled up in my lap. But when he came back Sunday night, he seemed different. He barely spoke, avoided my eyes. Slept in the guest room. All week he was distant. Came home late smelling like cigarettes and a woman's perfume I didn't recognize. Finally, I asked, "Mark, is everything okay?" "Yeah, fine," he said curtly, staring at the TV. Then one evening he turned it off, took a deep breath, and looked at me with tired, sad eyes. "Lisa, we need to talk." My heart sank. I waited. "I met someone on the trip. She's younger, fun, makes me feel alive again. You're a good wife, really. We've had a lot together. But I need something else now. I'm sorry." He talked for what felt like hours, about how exciting she was, how she made him feel 25 again. His words fell like heavy rain on a cold tin roof, relentless, chilling, loud. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He moved out a week later, taking only a suitcase and his old guitar. I watched him leave from the living room window, feeling numb, like my entire body had fallen asleep and couldn't wake up. Days passed in a fog. I barely ate. Coffee in the morning, maybe some crackers by night. I caught my reflection one afternoon. Hollow eyes, tangled hair in a messy bun, an oversized sweater hanging off my shoulders. At work, my colleagues at the clinic asked, "You okay, Lisa?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied with the same empty smile. Then came the day I had to look at apartments. We were splitting the money from the house sale. I walked into a small studio in downtown Portland, unshowered, no makeup, hair pulled back under a knit beanie. The real estate agent, a young woman named Brooke with a sleek ponytail and stylish boots, looked me up and down gently. "Divorce?" she asked softly. I nodded, and before I knew it, I was sobbing uncontrollably on her faux leather office chair. I hadn't cried like that in months. She handed me a tissue, waited for me to catch my breath, and said, "You're stronger than you think, Lisa." Afterwards, she took me for coffee at a tiny cafe that smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon rolls. She told me about her own life, her heartbreaks, her dreams. For the first time in almost a year, I felt something lift inside me. Weeks passed. I bought the studio apartment, painted the walls a warm sage green, hung up white linen curtains, bought myself a new pair of sneakers, ordered a second-hand bike from Craigslist, something I'd always wanted but never let myself buy. I wrote out a list in a spiral notebook, things I'd always wanted to do but never did. Take a pottery class, drive the Pacific Coast Highway alone, learn to make sourdough bread, join a book club. December came. One chilly evening, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Mark standing there, holding a cheap bouquet of gas station roses and a box of Whitman's chocolates. "Lisa, I made a mistake. She's too much for me. I miss the quiet life with you. Can I come home?" I looked at him for a long moment, his shoulders slumped, his hair thinner than I remembered. Once my heart would have jumped at seeing him again, but now I felt nothing. "No, Mark, you made your choice, and I'm happy now." He nodded, eyes glistening, and turned away. Later, my sister called. "Lisa, family is sacred. Maybe you should forgive him." But I knew the truth. Family isn't just names on a marriage certificate. Family is where love lives, where your heart feels safe. Now, I wake up alone every morning, brew my coffee, watch the sunrise over the city from my window, Milo purring beside me. My kids visit on weekends. I read novels late into the night, take long walks along the river, bake bread that fills my apartment with the smell of home. I am Lisa, and I've finally found myself again.